Whether you've been a voter before, or like so many people in Scotland, you've not been voting for years, this referendum on September the 18th is crucial for all of Scotland's future. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and intersex people don't only vote on the basis of how LGBTI issues are dealt with in politics. There's a whole range of issues, from a fairer, more equal society to a sustainable economy for the future. But the public services, which all Scots depend on, do need to respect and reflect the different distinctive needs of LGBTI people in Scotland. The Scottish Parliament is a parliament which over its 15 years has never once voted the wrong way on an issue of LGBTI equality. Sometimes we've been ahead of the curve, sometimes a bit behind. We were way ahead of most European countries on inclusive hate crime legislation, which had a proper definition of transgender identity included within hate crimes. We were ahead of the rest of the UK on repealing Section 28. We took a bit longer on equal marriage, but I think we've managed to get the detail of that legislation right. In many ways, there are wrinkles with the UK legislation which Westminster is going to have to go back and iron out after the fact. Getting that consultation right meant that we've ended up with a stronger piece of legislation, more in keeping with the principles of equality in Scotland. But I don't want to pretend that only Scotland is able to protect LGBTI rights and equality. Clearly, most Western European countries are moving in the right direction. Even some of the political parties which were openly hostile to our equality in the past are also moving in the right direction. And it's now really only the fringe eccentrics of UKIP and the BNP, the nasty, vicious, hard right tendencies that openly express homophobia, transphobia and other forms of prejudice against LGBTI people. But very often what the mainstream political parties do is allow a kind of ignorance, a kind of lower down of the pecking order. It's going to be really important, whatever the outcome of the referendum, that LGBTI people, you, whether you've voted before or not, whether you've been politically active or not, keep staying engaged in Scottish politics, whether in the transition to independence or in whatever comes after a no vote. That reconnection of people with politics is going to be crucial. And if we want LGBTI equality and human rights to be up the priority list, you need to stay engaged with politics after the referendum, whatever the result. But I believe there are real opportunities from a yes vote, real opportunities for Scotland to lead the way, not just on some of the issues like hate crime and adoption legislation and better sexuality issues addressed in the curriculum in education, not just those things that are already devolved, but on some reserved issues where the UK government hasn't made progress. An inclusive and appropriate treatment of LGBTI issues in the immigration and asylum system, for example. This has been woefully lacking. We are now at the point where the immigration tribunals and asylum tribunals don't tell people to go back to their country of origin and, in quotes, live discreetly. We know that that was putting many, many lives at risk. But what people are subjected to is intrusive and sometimes, frankly, bizarre inquisitions about how they can prove their innate sexuality, gender identity. These are simply unreasonable approaches to people who have been fleeing for their lives from some of the most hostile countries in the world, countries which still persecute, criminalise, torture and even murder LGBTI people. It's not just a question of pension and inheritance rights. The issue of human rights and equality for our communities around the world is one of life and death. I believe that an independent Scotland running its own immigration and asylum system would do a great deal better than the UK has done. And we would also be a progressive voice on the world stage, challenging those countries which do continue to persecute, which do continue to fail on our equalities and human rights. There are many opportunities that flow from a yes vote in the field of employment and equality legislation as well. The Scottish Parliament and Government have a responsibility to promote equal opportunities, but we can't change the law in that area. That's reserved to Westminster still. And if we want to go further, if we want to ensure that all goods and services, including education, where let's remember nearly 1 in 5 Scottish children are still being educated by an organisation which considers us to be morally defective, If we want to go further, change the law to ensure that we have the best possible treatment of LGBTI people's equality and human rights, and protect the public services that all of us in Scotland, everyone, not just LGBTI people, but our friends, our neighbours, our whole community depends on, and build a fairer, more equal society for the future, I think we can only do that with a yes vote. You can still register to vote until the 2nd of September. You can also make sure that you take part in KaleidoScot's own opinion poll at KaleidoScot.com. But crucially, I hope you'll vote in the referendum, and I hope whatever the result of the referendum, yes or no, and whichever way you vote, you remain engaged and proactive in your engagement with Scottish politics. All politicians and all political parties right across the spectrum, whatever your views and their views, need to know that our communities are vocal and expect our equality and human rights to be high on the political agenda, whether in an independent Scotland or within the confines of devolution.